Next presentation is really one of the most exciting ones to me because we're going to go from sort of theory that we've been setting up, and there's a lot of practical applications that you'll do locally, but this is one that we've been working behind the scenes to help connect some of the dots. How do you develop an identity, create a message, identify the correct medium to reach an audience that you want to reach, you're going to see a lot of neat things. Janette Fennell has a really unbelievable story. It's exciting, it's inspiring, and it's an example of what you see so many times in your practice, which is adversity often leading to positive results. These are the good stories that don't often get told. She is the founder and leader of Kids in Cars. It is a nonprofit 501c3. She's going to tell you all about it, but listen closely. This is an exciting one. About halfway through the presentation, she'll start talking about how we'll be able to connect some of these dots, and there'll be a sign-up sheet. Some of you have seen it and signed up already, but we're going to deploy those today so you don't miss the opportunity. And with that, I'll turn it over to Janette Fennell. Thank you.
I bet you can hear me now. Good morning. I am so excited to be here, besides the fact that it's a beautiful location and it's a beautiful day, but to have the opportunity to spend some time with people who are like-minded. I know all of you, one of the reasons you're here is because you do care about your customers, you care about your community, and want to learn more about being engaged in that way. So with that, without any further ado, I'm going to tell you a story. And because people always say, what do you just wake up one morning and decide to do something like this? And of course, that's not the way it happens. My family was kidnapped. We were locked in the trunk of a car, and we had no idea during this ordeal what our abductors had done with our then 9-month-old baby. We were coming home. We were living in San Francisco at the time, and before the garage door could get all the way down, masked men with guns, loaded guns, shoved us into the trunk of our car and then took off. We had no idea. We couldn't hear our baby because he was asleep when we arrived home, but we're going through the streets of San Francisco, obviously with 2 big adults in the trunk, bottoming out the car, and we thought we were dead. You just have no idea, like that feeling of it doesn't matter about anything. They have you, you're in the trunk, and you don't know where you're going. So I'm going to make a very long story as short as I can, but we were taken to a secondary location where we were assaulted, we were robbed, and basically left for dead. It was one of these things when the last thing we heard from them is, if this isn't the right PIN number for your ATM, we're going to come back and kill you. And I know that sounds kind of unusual, but to me it was very calming because we gave them the right number to our ATM and they were leaving. So this is where the story gets a little woo-woo, totally divine intervention, but we're in this trunk, and I had pulled everything that I could away from the trunk lining on the way over to our trip to the project. And so there's this opening. I was pulling up brake wires and backup lights and all that kind of stuff. So that was all opened, but we were in a darkened trunk. They had the keys to the car. They had taken everything. There was no light source, but I saw a light. Now, how the heck could I see a light? But I did. And then I said to my husband, I think I found the trunk release. And that didn't come from my brain, but it came out of my mouth. And he felt around where all this was opened, and he's, mechanical enough to understand that, when you're in your car and you pull that trunk release, it has to engage somewhere. And he pulled it, and the trunk went bink, it opened right up. What a great opportunity. But then, what had happened to our baby boy? I pole vaulted out of that trunk, as you might imagine. I went to the back seat, and there was no car seat, no baby. There was absolutely nothing. And any mom, any dad in this room would understand that that was the lowest part you could ever imagine in your life. you know, your mind goes on, and I don't know why I picked a price of $30,000. I figured they had taken him, and that's what they were going to sell him for. I mean, the kid's worth $1 million, but I don't know, I said $30,000. So I kept saying, let's go home. Maybe they took him out. And my husband kept saying, call 911. And so he won, and he was right. We got to a payphone, and we weren't there but a minute, and another car pulls up, and these 4 hoodlums pull out, and I'm like, oh, this is it. But it was a really undercover cops. So to get you a feeling for how dangerous of an area we were in the projects, 4 undercover cops were there in a minute, on the phone with 911, and they sent another officer to our home. And lo and behold, there was our baby in his car seat, just sitting there on the sidewalk. And in San Francisco, we don't have front lawns, so I always say a little bit of a side story, of course, is that a car seat saved his life, and it wasn't even in the car. Because if they had taken him and just thrown him out, of course he would have crawled right into the street, and he would no longer be with us. So obviously, we were pretty shaken by this situation. The good news is, yes, he did survive, and we all survived. But when the officer said to me that night, it never ends this way. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they said, you don't have to have much of an imagination to understand the number of steps and things that you went through. People do not walk away from this relatively unharmed. So that became this tape in my head. How does it end? How does it end? So we decided to do something about it. It took me a long, long time, built a database, found out that people were really being put in the trunk of cars and killed. So I worked and said, there's got to be a way out. And ladies and gentlemen, this piece of plastic is the difference between life and death. All vehicles that are 2002 or newer now have this little glow-in-the-dark trunk release. But the best news of this whole story is we do not know of one fatality in a car trunk that has this glow-in-the-dark release. I mean, we get stories, and someone was thrown in the trunk and taken away, and then they say, but they found the glow-in-the-dark trunk release and they got out. We do not know of one fatality. So that's the best news of the whole story. But, as we're working about, talking about having this radius of influence, I always subscribe to, if you get a cartoon about your issue, right, then you've made it. So we get these trunk releases in, and this appears. Oh my, where's that guy I met from New Jersey? They wanted a trunk, they wanted a car without one of those trunk releases. And I remember when I was working on this, my boys were very young, and by 10 o'clock and get everybody in bed, I'd be at the computer working away, and all of a sudden I hear Jay Leno doing his monologue. And he goes, this group up in San Francisco, and they want to get trunk releases in vehicles. That's not a bad idea, but it's being vehemently opposed by the Gambinis. And he lists all his Italian family. So, I mean, I was so tired, I thought I was dreaming, but he really did say that. So, yes, you do want to make the national news. And I want you to remember one thing. If you only remember one thing out of this conference, she's not your ordinary baggage, because we did something about a terrible incident. So who is Kids in Cars? I mean, we took care of all this great stuff, and we have trunk releases in vehicles, and I was done, all right? I did what I wanted to do. Well, I kept getting calls. What about kids strangled by power windows? What about kids knocking cars into gear? What about all these things? And I'm like, I just want to get trunk releases in cars. But I also believe if you know there's a problem and you don't do anything about it, you're part of the problem. So that's how Kids in Cars was formed. And we do work to keep kids safe in and around motor vehicles, but it's a little maybe different than what you might have known in the past. So let me tell you a little bit about what we do. These are our 5 tenets, and we'll go through them: data collection, education, policy, product redesign, and survivor advocacy. That's really what we do on a day-to-day basis. So the first one is data collection. Now we hear, right, every year, 30 to 40,000 people die on our roads and highways. A terrible number. We have got to bring it down. And that's the information according to the Fatal Analysis Reporting System. Well, the only way you get in that database is, number one, you have to be involved in a crash. Number two, it has to happen on a public road or highway. And number three, you die within 30 days of the incident. Well, guess what? Everything we work on does not fit that criteria at all. And all of those things were being ignored. But do you think it's a big problem or a little problem? It's kind of hard to say. Let's see. Well, you know, we got this another cartoon, right? This is from the Washington Post. And, you know, here I am. See if this is working. No? Trying to get the point. There it is. At the door of NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And here's that FARS data we just talked about, right? And I'm like, here's all these other cases. Why don't you put those in the computer, right? They're like, no, 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 they don't fit in the computer. But look at this nose they put on me. Now, come on, is my nose that big? No, 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 no. But maybe it meant you're putting your nose in places it shouldn't be. I don't care, but there's the cartoon. So we have been quoted as one of the saddest databases in America. And why is that? My only objection is I would take out one of. And I would say we are the saddest database in America. And why is that? Number one, we focus on children. And I mean, I just can't imagine anything worse than the death of a child. Nothing's worse than that, right? Oh, we got something worse than that we deal with on an everyday basis. In 70% of these cases, it is a direct family member who kills the child. The people who love them, the people who would give anything for these children, are now responsible for their death. The dad that backs over the baby, the mom who forgets to drop the baby at daycare. It just doesn't get any worse than this. But there's a lot of things we can do to bring these numbers down. So what do we work on? Since we don't work on any of the things in the FARS data, we work on the things that happen off the public road or highway. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on there that was completely ignored by our government until we got involved. And you can see the number one thing is backovers, but these frontovers, frontovers did not exist in this chart 2 years ago. And now it's the number 2 cause of death. Heat strokes when they're left alone in the vehicle, underage drivers. In most cases, these underage drivers, I'm not talking, 13, 14-year-olds, I'm talking 6, 7, 8. These kids who play video games figure they know how to drive a car. They grab the keys and it's not a pretty sight. Vehicles set into motion, they fall, drowning, and others. So this is, the pie, and we have these charts that show what we do. But we also got a bill passed that says, government, now you need to start collecting data. I tried to get the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to do this for 10 years. Of course, they wouldn't. And the old adage, it takes an act of Congress. So we got an act of Congress that mandated that they needed to start collecting data about what happens off the public road or highway. So the first report came out in 2009, and we know it's a really, really severe undercount. But what did they find? Oh, only 1,700 fatalities, only 841,000 injuries on an area that's vehicle-related from the agency who's responsible for keeping us safe on our roads and highways and making sure the vehicles that we drive are safe. I think we have a little problem, but that's what they came up with. Education. We're going to probably talk about that a little bit more in depth later, but we do need to educate people. It's very interesting because when we talk about this, and we threw out the stat that 50 children every week in the United States are backed over. 48 of those children end up in hospital emergency rooms, but at least 2 children die. And when you tell people that, they're like, no way. I said, no, that's an absolute fact. And they'll, well, I would know that. I would know if that was this big of a problem. And I said, well, probably the reason you don't know about it is the data wasn't being collected, and our government hasn't done anything about it. So yes, it is a stat, but it's something we really need to work on. Policy change, that's another thing we work on, and because, as you know, we're in the automotive world, that most of our roads lead to Washington, D.C. But we do work on that, and we feel it's really important to have strong leadership. The bill that I'm going to tell you about that we got passed, the Cameron Gilbranson Kids Transportation Safety Act, was very interesting because it did get passed, but at one point, and this was like so perfect, 3 of our sponsors, one was Hillary Clinton, one was Obama, and the other one was John McCain. So I figured whoever won, we're in, all right? So anyway, they were all co-sponsors, and we always try to pick, Republican, Democrat for the official sponsors and get as many co-sponsors as we can get. So let me tell you a little bit about the Cameron Gilbranson Kids Transportation Safety Act. Number 1, it establishes a performance standard for rear visibility. Anybody in here buy a car if you can't see 20 or 30 feet going forward? Oh, I don't think so. Everybody in this audience has a vehicle that you can't see behind. Some 8 to 10, some 20, some 50. It's a huge blind zone behind these vehicles. And I don't know for 100 years why no one thought we needed to see what was behind us. But we know because that fact is killing children. So our government, right now, they're really close to being finished, is setting a rear visibility standard. And we have just got to get rid of this huge blind zone behind our vehicles. It will be finished by the end of the year. I mean, the law's in place. They have set out a notice of proposed rulemaking. And right now, what it looks like is every vehicle that is sold or leased in the United States will have a rear view camera. It looks like about 10% by 2012, 40% by 2013, and 100% by 2014. That's a big deal. That's as big as airbags or seat belts. We're going to save a lot of lives this way. And probably a lot of bumpers. All right, what else does it do? Consider the requirement for auto reverse power windows. Not there on that one yet, but boy, we could use some help if you guys have any ideas. It's really hard to get data on this. We've done some Harris polls. It shows millions of people are hurt by power windows, but we're still working on trying to get that mandated. Putting vehicles in gear. You know how kids are goofing around and they could knock it into gear? No more. What we now have in every vehicle is called a brake transmission shift interlock, which means you can't get your car out of gear unless you have your foot on the brake. And everybody says, oh, that's already been taken care of. I'm like, well, in some vehicles, but not all. And that's what made it so dangerous, because everybody thought that feature was in their vehicle, and it wasn't. So now it will be, and it's already implemented, standard in all vehicles. And, oh, how fun. Our government's going to do a little bit of education and collect some data. But what I think is really significant, this is the only transportation bill that has passed in this country since 2005. The only transportation bill. Plus, it's a standalone bill, and we all know how difficult that might be. But we're pretty proud of that, or pretty disgusted that our government hasn't, even finished the reauthorization that was due last year. We also work on the state level. Now, these are the states that have laws that specifically make it illegal to leave children alone in cars. I mean, basically, every state would say it's illegal because if something happens. You can do child endangerment or, those type of laws, child neglect. But those are the specific states, and anybody in this audience, if you'd like to help us get some of these state laws passed, that's great as well. And then we do product redesign, right? The most effective way is to design out the danger. And this is my absolute favorite slide, right? Anybody have little kids? Look familiar, right? When you set up this little nursery setting, right? When they're 18 months, I mean, that's their whole life, right? 2 years, they might actually get a pattern. 2.5 years, they might stay somewhere for a few seconds. But we're not going to re-engineer these kids. I mean, I don't think I'm that different than my parents, my grandparents, or anybody in here think kids are any different today than they might have been 50 years ago? They aren't. They're inquisitive, they're impulsive, they don't understand danger. They don't know the difference between a sidewalk and the grass. They're very innocent and very impulsive, and as we all know, very quick. So I just think we have to always keep this in mind when we're talking about the little kids. And I kind of stole a famous saying and made it work for me. To err is human, but to forgive is design. And we need to design out these different types of problems. And then survivor advocacies. These are our real heroes. These are families that have come to Washington, D.C. It took us 5 years to get that bill passed. And they travel there on their own expense. They have a picture of their child who has died and go from office to office with us to let our legislators know that kids should not die this way. We need to thank them because what all that time and effort is not going to bring their child back, but it's going to save our children, our grandchildren, and people in the future. Obviously, a very big celebration. And we had a little awards banquet, and it's kind of interesting because on Capitol Hill, where we had a little awards banquet, is the same place we introduced the bill. And but it was 1 year later, on the fourth reintroduction, that we did pass it. But you might recognize Senator John Sununu. Now, think about this. Hillary Clinton, John Sununu were the co-sponsors of our bill. How much further apart do you get than that? And we talked about Dr. Gil Branson. This is him. This was the bill that was named after his son. He's a beloved pediatrician from Long Island and a real safety guy. He came home and, you know, the babysitter's there, his wife is there, and he goes, I gotta go back the car into the driveway because I wanna be safe coming out in the morning. And had no idea how he snuck out, but his little guy got behind him in his little jammies and his blue blanket. He didn't have a chance of seeing him. He backed over and killed his son. But take that times 50 times a week. So, but obviously an incredible day for Dr. Gil Branson. Oop, why do I keep doing that? And I'm sure a lot of people in here recognize this guy, Senator Nelson from Florida. And this is Representative Jan Schakowsky from Illinois, wonderful advocate for us, and then who's a Democrat, and then her co-sponsor was Peter King from New York, Republican. And you know, we're talking about radius of influence, and if people are, you know, so inclined to do some things on the political level, you know, you do get to meet all these people and you work with them. There's Senator Durbin, we've got Rockefeller, Senator Pryor, Senator Stevens, who no longer is with us, Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood. So it happens. But the thing I really want to emphasize is, and that's what keeps us going, is every life makes such a difference. And who knows if you might be the one to save the life of a child who's going to go on to discover the cure for cancer. So, what happens? Children are possibly in more danger outside of the car than inside of the car, which is really a bold statement because we know automobile crashes are the #1 killer of our children. But you can see that because there's limited visibility, a lot of children are killed that way. Why? Because we have these blind zones. We have these huge blind zones. And people don't understand or appreciate what you can't see. These measurements are all based on the fact that you are using your side mirrors and your rear view mirror perfectly. And what happens? I mean, there's 62 kids behind that Suburban, and you can't see one of them from using your mirrors correctly. So what we want people to know is before you turn that key, make sure you can see. And you know, I always like to throw this one in here. You can agree with me, or you can be wrong. I mean, these are the stats. This is what's going on with this issue. And then there's front overs. Another cartoon. I mean, it might be a little bit of an exaggeration, But you know, sitting up high just makes you feel so much safer. But I don't think those pedestrians feel the same way there. Front overs are on the rise. I think I mentioned that earlier, but as you can see, I went from nothing to 358 children. And our government isn't doing anything about it because we didn't even know this was a problem. Yes?
Why is that?
Why is that? It's because our vehicles are so high and you can't see, and people don't understand that there's a 6 to 8 foot blind zone in front of your vehicle. And this is happening in your driveway. This is happening in parking lots. It's obviously a very, very serious problem. And nothing's being done about it yet because it wasn't in our bill, but we will be addressing that. Yes?
Is that the bottom, the jump from 88 to 358, is that because of the increased reporting, or did there just happen to be a major increase in the number of fatalities from one year to the next?
I'm glad you asked that, and the question was about reporting. The data that I'm showing you here is kidsincars.org data, and unless it's been footnoted as NHTSA or something else. We collect our data the same way we have for the last 10 years. And it's acting like backovers did in 2003. So I don't think we're doing a better job finding things. And I mean, it's so hard to really get to the, the underlying cause on this, and we've got a lot of work to do with it. But even in the NHTSA data, it's very interesting as they report the different things that happen. Front overs are the #1 cause, and they're doing nothing about it. So it's very interesting because they haven't been directed to do that. We just had in the bill. So a lot needs to happen with that, obviously. But I don't think people understand. There's a certain area in front of your vehicle you cannot see. Children are inadvertently left alone in hot vehicles. I would really, really encourage everybody here, if you could, to read the article, Fatal Distraction. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Gene Weingarten. He is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. But we worked with him on this article for over 6 months. And last year, it won a Pulitzer Prize. So now I'm not just saying it's a great article, but it will give you a whole new level of understanding on how something so horrific would happen. And in that article, I have a quote that says, "This is failures of memory, not of love. It's so easy to judge these parents. It's so easy to say this would never happen to me. And the fact of it is, do you think any of these parents it happened to thought it could happen to them?" It really is, has everything to do with how our minds let us down. It has nothing to do with bad parenting, but really a parent that's having the worst, a very bad day, and their memory just lets them down. So this is an interesting chart. If you look at this right here, this is the 90s, and we didn't have airbags, and then we put in airbags, but kids were being killed, right? When they pop out in that front passenger seat. Oh my gosh, we don't want kids to be killed that way. So we said, put them in the back seat. And they're safer in the back seat, they belong in the back seat, and here we are. Kids are not being killed that way. Yay! Auto industry got together with the government, with the safety advocates. We took care of that problem. Wonderful. But as you know, more than most audience, the law of unintended consequences. So you look here in these yellow lines, and those are the numbers of children who have been killed or who have died in hot cars. Right here, it's last year, worst year ever. 49 children lost their lives in a hot vehicle. Now, if you look at this chart in its entirety, this little gray area right here, you add them all together, that's 180 children who died by being hit by an airbag. Terrible. But you look at this same chart, same amount of time, over 580 children have died in hot cars. Where's the outrage? Where is the outrage? People don't understand this issue. We educate, we try to have people learn about this. But what do we do when our memory fails us, right? We all buy cars. Somehow at the auto industry, they know we're not perfect. Because if we forget to get our seatbelt on, right? If our gas tank's running low, we get a light. If we leave our keys in the ignition, we get a buzz, right? We're not perfect. And, you know, if we forget to turn our headlights off, we get a buzz or it turns them off for us. But maybe some technology could help here, right? Our friends at NASA have come up with a product, not on the market yet. It's got a patent out there if anyone wants to bring it to market. There's products like this, put it in the child's car seat. There are some technologies that are available. But, you know, if you don't think it's going to happen to you, why would you buy that, right? We really, really need to educate people about this issue. And I've always thought this, it wasn't until last year I started to say it, but this is just a fact. I mean, who's saying it's not okay to have a dead car battery, but it is okay to have a dead baby? That is just fact. I mean, you cannot buy a car today that doesn't tell you or turn off the lights for you. I think the consequences are so, obviously, so much more significant, but nothing's being done. So power windows, is this the answer? Get the old crank back? Kids won't be strangled by power windows. I don't think we're going to be able to sell that one, right? So we did work on getting our power window switches made safer. We had these rocker switches and these little toggle switches, and what would happen is the child, like, maybe would put their knee on the armrest, want to wave to somebody, that window would go up and they were strangled to death. And again, we worked for years trying to get the car companies to do it, but again, we took an act of Congress. But the good news is now all power windows will be this safer pull up, push down, and that started with our model year 2010. So we gotta have a little cartoon here, right? We got our dog, just, you know, he puts his head out the window because that's what dogs do. But then we got this cat. Oops. We got this cat that, you know, so this is the issue we're trying to really get our government to pick up on, because they don't think there's enough kids killed this way. But they're not looking at the injury data. They think because we got safer switches, this is going to go away. And again, we've done a survey and we've given it to them, and it really, we did it twice. Because the first time, you know, it was through online, and they said, oh, well, we don't think that's right. So 2 weeks later, we did it with the telephone calls, and the results were almost identical. And that was a Harris Interactive poll. So still working on that one. So what are we here? I just wanted to give you, you know, an idea of what we do, so you could decide if you would like to partner with us. But we're talking about the car accidents you really don't think about, and all communities need to be educated about. How would you like to become a kidsincars.org spokesperson in your community? The media call us all the time. I mean, it's this incredible phenomena that no one else believes. But I was telling someone that, I mean, there's not a major show that we haven't been on. You know, Good Morning America 10 or 20 times, the Today Show, same thing, Oprah. I mean, we're in the Wall Street Journal, and not saying that to impress you, I'm just saying that we've got all this media. And I'm like, without doing a pitch ever. And I couldn't figure out why, and a public relations person told me, he goes, well, you know, you're a one-stop shop. And I go, what does that mean? Well, reporters, you know, like to do things efficiently, might be a little lazy. They come to you, they're going to get the stats. They come to you, they're going to get, you know, the overall picture. They come to you, they're going to find parents who have been affected by this. So what we don't have are every one of our communities covered with a spokesperson. And I can't tell you how many times, you know, I get a call, okay, here's the stat, da-da-da, we want an on-camera interview. And I'm like, we don't have anybody there. And I said I can do Skype, but, you know, they want someone local in the community. So we would love for some of you to sign up for something like that, and, you know, and to be the person to get the information out in the community. So how can we help you with something like this? What we did is we pulled some data for Hillsborough County, and this is what it's showing us. We the number of incidents that happen, here's the deaths, and then here are the age of children. And so you are the expert. Nobody else on earth has this data. Can't get it from the government, they never get to that level. And remember, this isn't underreporting, but it gives you a good feel for what's going on. And these are the types of facts, and this is where we draw a lot of our information from, you know, but here's a 3-year-old found dead in the car because someone else thought someone else took the child in. Happens a lot. Like people will come home maybe after a day at the beach and mom thinks dad brought in the baby, dad thinks mom brought in the baby, and when they're found, it's too late. Father accidentally runs over daughter. I mean, obviously none of these are made up. This is right from the news, happening all the time. Infant dies after being accidentally run over by a family member. So it's going on and on. And we also pulled the data for Pinellas County. Again, a very different look, neighboring counties, but you've got the incidents, you've got the deaths and the age of the children. We are able to supply all of that to you to make you the expert. The next thing we'd like to talk about, which we think is a kind of a cool idea, is a blind zone kit. I know we've talked so much about people don't understand how big the blind zones are. So what we're trying to do is get something like that pulled together. And for instance, got a little sample kit right here. And Wagner Vaughn is just so kindly already signed up for our program, so we customized it this way. And just some of the things that would come in there would be this little cone. Isn't that efficient? But look what it becomes. A collapsible cone becomes 28 inches, about the same size as a 1 to 2-year-old, who are the #1 age who are in trouble. Is Mike here? Where's Mike? Come here, Mike. Do we have a chair for Mike? All right, so what I want to just demonstrate kind of really briefly is besides your cone, you have this cool little measuring tape in here. Oop. Go with the other measuring tape. And with that, you can do a blind zone test. So Mike's in his car, and I say, Mike, what do you think the blind zone is behind your car?
Probably 8 to 10 feet.
8 to 10 feet, okay. So get in your car. Obviously, we're pretending this is a car. And I said, okay, Mike, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this orange cone here, and I am going to keep putting it back until you can see it, all right?
Okay.
So, you know, just wave your arm when you can see it, okay?
Like I'd be backing up.
Yeah, you're looking in your rearview mirrors, you're backing up, you can't see it, you know, you kind of prop yourself up. Can you see it yet? No. 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 And then you say, okay, Mike. And he said, can you see it now? He can see it now, right? So he waves. I said, well, come on out, right? So he gets out of his vehicle, and he goes, no, you're not going to laugh. You're going to go, I had no idea. And then what I do is, Mike, I'm going to put this on the bumper of your car, and you just keep going and tell me. And you have that person, like, see, oh my gosh. We actually did this yesterday, and Mike thought his blind zone was like 6 to 8 feet, and it was 17 feet.
This is 26 and a half.
That's, yeah, I mean, that would be kind of average. But isn't that a simple, easy way, very demonstrable, and it's also the type of thing that people want to go, I got to go home, you know, and tell my teenage daughter, or I want to go tell my spouse. But very demonstrable, and a great and easy way to have people understand and appreciate how large that blind zone is. So what we would like to do is, you know, see if we can get these kids out into the community. You certainly can do the demonstrations yourself, but you know that might be a little difficult with your schedules. But wouldn't it be nice if everybody had this nice kit? And when people think of blind zones, And all the times it happens, they're going to come to you. They're going to come to you because you're the expert. So that's another aspect of what we're trying to do. And you can see here some examples. All right, these are my sons. I got to tell you, these are my sons. And you know, this is at a golf course. We just took some plastic, put it behind there. And we are a partner with Consumer Reports. And ever since getting involved with us in 2003, they now measure the blind zone behind every vehicle. So another piece of this handy-dandy kit is all the vehicles that they've tested, and it lists what the blind zone is for a 5'1" and a 5'8" driver. So you got a little cheat sheet here besides a personal type of way to get the information out. How about some community outreach? We've got public service announcements, we've got posters that need to get out there, very important. And this is something we are just about ready to announce. We talked about the fact that it's our memory. And I don't want to get too technical here, but we got this basal ganglia back here. That part of our brain is as old as the dinosaurs, and it is so strong. It is so strong. Then we have our prefrontal cortex here that keeps us going. So I'm driving home, and in my prefrontal cortex, I'm gonna stop and get some milk. I gotta stop and get some milk. We need milk. As I pull into my driveway. I'm like, oh, I forgot to get the milk. It's because my basal ganglia just takes over, and I go home the way I always go home. Happens all the time. Anyone ever have that feeling? Autopilot. Autopilot happens because we have this strong basal ganglia. And we couldn't exist without it because, I don't want to think, take this, point this. I mean, it just happens, but it's a very strong part of our brain. So how can people find out that this can happen to them unless they're educated? So, and this is the only program of its kind. So what we did is we've come up with these cards, and we would like these to be put in the parent packets at all your hospitals that deliver children. We want people from the very start to know that even the best of parents can have this happen. I mean, you're sleep deprived, you're out of your normal routine, you've got hormone changes, you've got exhaustion. And I don't care if you're the mom or the dad, but when that baby is, 3 months, 6 months, I mean, you are going on autopilot. And then right here, we have a real story about a little girl who got forgotten in the car. Her dad dropped off her older sister and went to take her to daycare, and there was a detour. So it got him off track. Then he got a phone call. He had been laid off of work, and it was like maybe a new job, very distracted. Went to, park at the church he was doing some work for, and totally forgot that she was in there. By the time she was found, it was too late. But that's, an example. Why does that keep happening like that? And then on the back are all these safety tips. We want people, put something in the back seat of your car, right in front of that car seat. Your handbag, your cell phone, your employee badge, something you're going to need every time you arrive at your destination. Then what we want, is open your door. Why is it doing? I'm so sorry. Open your doors every time you arrive at your location. Now, how easy is that? You know how many deaths that would have prevented? Just open that back door. And remember, little babies, obviously, not always, but usually fall asleep. They're very quiet. But most importantly, they're rear-facing, and a rear-facing car seat does not look any different if it's empty or if it's full. Think about that. I mean, if their head's popping over the top, the car seat's too small. And you're exhausted, and. So open the doors. Another one is ask your babysitter or child care provider, if my child doesn't arrive within 30 minutes of when they're expected, call me. Here's every number conceivable to call me. Could have saved the lives of many children. Here's another one we really like. Keep a teddy bear or a stuffed animal in the car seat. And as soon as you put the baby in, Throw the teddy bear in the front passenger seat. We're very cue dependent. Teddy bear, baby in the back. No teddy bear, it's in the car seat. I don't have the baby. And then, of course, we always encourage avoid cell phones and texting. So this is something, like I said, it would be, I think, such a wonderful community service to get that into your hospitals, because we got to start somewhere. And people aren't being told that these dangers exist. This is just a little community involvement. It can be this simple. These little kids went and collected a bunch of teddy bears. And they put on here this little look before you lock our cards, gave them to the hospital personnel. So when the people at that hospital have their baby, they get the teddy bear and the message. Not a hard thing to do. But look at those nurses, they're certainly smiling. Here's another community involvement project. These are lawyers who live in Leawood, Kansas. And they, as a firm, decide that they want to volunteer at an organization, came to the office. And, part of what we do, of course, is we track these cases. And many times, parents are charged. Sometimes they're convicted, sometimes they're not. But a lot of times, it's very difficult for us to find that information. So they came, and I know you guys have all these tricks of finding out the results of things, and they were extremely helpful. So this is something somebody sent me, which I thought it was the funniest thing in the whole wide world. I mean, laugh out loud. So I get this email, and then I get the rest of it. Right? I mean, that's who we want to be. We want to be the people that are out there working. Or maybe this is what you want to be. You really want people to understand that you're the good guys, you're out there, and you're doing all the right things. So I want to say thank you at this point, but I'm not done. Because what I really want to do is get some input from you, get some ideas, see if people might be interested. We have an unlimited list of ways to get involved, but Mason and I thought just to get started, it would be good to do the media spokesperson, the Blind Zone kit, and the community involvement. But like I alluded to, if any of you want to get involved in getting a state law or federal law passed, that's a good idea. I mean, even if you see incidents that happen in your area, email them to us, right? Now, how easy could this be? Take this recycle box, put it in your office, or put it all over town, right? Because we can get these for free. But I hate the fact that these cell phones and PDAs are going into landfills. So if you send these, and it's prepaid postage to send it back, where's that on there? Somewhere, here it is. Then Kids in Cars gets maybe about $1 an item, but that's such an easy way. But I'm so happy when people do this, because like I said, I am a serious recycler. So the thought of those things getting into our landfills and then seeping in. We have people that do all different things, but can I maybe get some questions or some input or ideas?
Any questions, Jerry? Hold on. He was asking how much the kits cost for, because
how much
part
do
of
kits cost?
right.
Well, the Blind Zone kits, we are estimating are going to be about $50. You have this really cool collapsible cone, you have this really nice measuring tape, and then you have the consumer reports, you have brochures, you have posters, and the type of things you would need to get started. The next step of that, though, is we also want to include a DVD to demonstrate. So we make it perfectly simple. And I think it would be great with your law firm on there, going to all the safety fairs once you give these to people. It is a very positive outreach in the community, and you're saving lives.
This is one of the things that we have been talking about internally, and in the list that are passing around, and if you haven't seen one yet, definitely you can grab it outside or grab Janette afterwards. But we're constantly trying to walk through and talk to individual attorneys and firms about how do you make these connections and how do you engage and create relationships in a community. And this is like a relationship in a box. I mean, this just really shows up. I mean, can you imagine how many of you would like the reputation of being the safety lawyer in your area, the one that's associated with child safety? And so when the news is looking for somebody to talk about safety related issues, they come and find you. I mean, that's the kind of thing that is really just incredible. Or as
the other thing we do is we feed that, because they call me, get the stats, and then I need someone to do a live interview. And I'm like, oh, we have someone there. We have someone there. And then that makes it real easy.
Or when you're going in to speak to your local safety officials in your community, and you're doing train the trainer kind of presentations. And so you go in and you demonstrate to a group of law enforcement officers, for example, public information officers, and you say, here is how you can go out into the community and train others about what the backup safety distance is in reality, and here's the kit that we're giving you, and it's branded for us, and if you need more information or supplies, please get in touch with us. I mean, those are the kind of relationships that you're looking for ways to build, and this is really, that's what's so incredible about, and really so generous of Janette to leverage her relationship and her reputation to help those locally that are interested in the same kind of things that we are. If you're talking about growing your radius of influence, this is incredible. And are you going to show off some of the information
I'm going to show
you're given?
one of the kits what it would look like. But I think another thing that's important is this issue is new enough, we'll say, because if we hadn't been collecting data, all of these would have just continued to be the freak accidents. They're not. So now we know it's an issue. And this would be an example of like a packet that could get you started. What we did is, because Wagner Vaughn is our first partner, we put together we got books volume, some information, and it shows, like you saw before, the national data, and then the specific data to that county. The other thing that fell out are our wonderful books, and I think some people have come by. Can I take 1 minute just to read? These books, they look like the little golden books from when we grew up. Some of you might not be that old, but when I grew up, these were the cute little books, golden books. And we had them made for legislators, because they have 1 second to get your message. And this one says, Mommy goes into the store for a minute. It's a one-page book. Johnny waits in the car. The sun is shining. The car gets very hot inside. Johnny begins to feel sleepy. Johnny shuts his eye. The end. Then we have another one. Mommy goes into the store for a minute. Oh, wait a second. That's the same one. You get all the same ones here. They're all the mommy ones. But there's ones about blind zones. Sally's playing in the driveway. And then it says, Daddy doesn't see Sally. Sally doesn't see Daddy. Daddy backs up. The end. Those type of things. That in one little page tells the whole story. But these are the type of things that would come in a kit, And by the way, all of this is downloadable for free on our website. The 62 kids, 50 kids, get backed over every week, the airbag versus heat stroke deaths. Here's another one that just shows the heat stroke deaths. The consumer reports, an order form. And the other thing I want to do when break starts is I want to show you, I'll put them and have them run, are our public service announcements. We have quite a few, and they're very good. They take people through the dangers, and it would be wonderful, to get these airing in your community. The brochures, all the different types of things it would take to get you up and running. And I know Mason's talking about there would be a training for people who are interested in taking this message to your community, because you can be the expert, and I could use your help. Yes?
Could we put your banner logo on? Can we put your banner and logo on our website, number one, and number two, can we put your videos
on our website. Would that be permissible?
Well, that's easy, yes and yes. If you put the banner on your website, I think we want to have some language with it. You know, XXS Law Firm is a advocate for keeping kids safe in and around in cars with the logo. Here are public service announcements. I mean, it's just sort of a match made in heaven, I think. And I hope you feel that way because there's so much that can be done.
So to clarify for Janette, I don't think what she's saying is put her banner on indiscriminately on your website. I think what she's saying is she's looking to create relationships with local attorneys and firms that would have a significance and would achieve some of their greater goals. And if you are in that kind of relationship, then it would be a natural fit for you to identify yourself, and that is she's very welcome to. Does that make sense?
But Mason,
yes.
I've been listening to all this stuff these guys have been telling the last 2 days. Links. I'm teasing. So,
you can always,
you know, if you like what we do, you can say for safety information, go here.
Yes, you can always link to her site. If you have a blog, you can write about her, and that absolutely do that. But if you're going to identify yourself in some sort of association with her, then make sure that the relationship is the correct one. And again, we're looking for a real practical way to do that. We're certainly not trying to stand in the middle of y'all getting together, and so please come directly to Janette. But for instance, if you're an injury board member and you're looking for sort of like, all right, I want like a 1, 2, 3 step process to get involved, that's what we're trying to put together for our folks. We're certainly willing to work with anybody in terms of what that looks like.
And a great kickoff to all of this is when the June safety report comes out. We're on the front page. And there's a wonderful 6-page spread that we wrote and supplied some graphics and pictures for. But that's, you know, you can say, hey, here, this is who I'm working with, and this is why it's important in our community to get the word out. So, I mean, that can even be a hello introduction piece.
Yeah, I don't think we've totally run it by you yet, Janette, but I'm going to kind of volunteer you a little bit. If you have signed up and you are interested, we're going to try, if it's okay with you, Janette, we've got a professional photographer here. If your firm is interested in this kind of relationship, even as a potential, will you meet here up front after the next presentation, so right before lunch? Will you meet up here, and we will go and have individual photos with you and your firm representatives and Janette together? Because that's the kind of collateral, whether it's at, you know, you're customizing the safety report. Anna Paul Schwartz is one that does that. You can put that kind of stuff on the back cover. That's very powerful. You can run her PSA, in essence, associate it with your firm and have a win-win situation. And so we're going to try to give you some collateral while we've got Janette here. If you're interested in this relationship, we'll figure out what all the details are coming up, but we definitely want to take advantage of the fact that you physically can have a photo, and that can go on your website, it can go on a blog, it can go in a newsletter, it can go in the safety report. So we just want to, unless you're going to Kansas soon, and we have somebody who's literally down the street, but unless you're going to Kansas soon, this is probably the last time you're going to see Janette in the next month or two.
I'm trying for Bahamas, guys. I'm so trying for Bahamas. Is Tom in here? Where is Tom in?
That's the fault. So anyway, we're running a little bit late. Grab Janette at the break. We're going to see some more of this stuff. Stand up, stretch. We're going to take 10 minutes from whatever time it is right now. We're going to come back and hear from Nick. Janette Fennell.